This is The Fit Mess with Zach and Jeremy.
The focus of our conversation this week is no matter where you are in your struggle toward better wellness, better fitness, whatever your goals are, taking them one step at a time. I know this is a lesson that I have to keep teaching myself over and over again. And ironically, even just in my physical fitness right now, a lot of the work that I'm doing is just walking. So literally for me right now, a lot of the work that I'm doing is one step at a time and trying to just stay present, trying to stay aware of what I'm able to do, what I'm willing to do, what I have time to do, what the snow on the ground is allowing me to do. Remembering that what I'm working toward is a long-term goal, is something that is not going to happen overnight, is the way that I stay grounded and the way that I keep working toward those goals. Because if I expected, to go for a walk for an hour today and wake up tomorrow 20 pounds lighter, I'm going to give up really quickly.
You mean that's not how it works?
Evidently not. 44 years of experience shows that that's not the way it works.
Damn.
But this is something that I've learned over and over again. Every time I've gotten to my mountaintop, whatever goal I'm trying to reach, I look back down the hill and I go, damn, I did a lot of things. And then I'll, take it for granted. I'll fall off the hill, end up back at the bottom, look at all the steps I have to take and get overwhelmed. And then remember that it starts with just that first step.
Well, and also when you're rolling back down the hill, you pick up some bruises along the way
yeah,
that don't heal very quickly.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And I make that mistake myself too. Whenever I get to the peak, there's 25 different things that are happening that are getting me there. There's, the right, eating, the right working out, the right mindfulness, all of that stuff. When you build it slowly, one piece at a time, adding one thing every couple of weeks, maybe, or every 3 weeks, small steps that are easy, it's doable. It's small, bite-sized pieces. But yeah, when you do fall and you lose a dozen of them and you look back and you try and put them all back in place at once, it usually leads to rolling down the hill even further.
I find that too. And I think we even talked about this last week with Jaya Myra, just that idea that, you sort of implement all of these tools that are helping you reach your goal. And for me, if I fall off of one of them, it is just dominoes. The one knocks down the rest. And I end up back at square one. And I look at that list of things that I was doing, the things I was building up towards. And when they've all fallen down, it can be so intimidating to get back on the horse and to take that first step. But it literally is that first step every single time. If you do one thing, it will almost always lead to more and more steps towards your goals.
So what's your one thing whenever you fall off? What's the one thing you start with?
It really depends. If it's physical fitness, it's typically walking because that is the easiest thing I can do. I can put on a pair of shoes and I can go for a walk around the block.
Mm-hmm.
If it's eating, it's fasting because there's nothing I like better than doing nothing. If the thing that I have to do is nothing, count me in. I can do that. I can give that my all.
Yeah.
If I want to get a little bit deeper, I'll try and force myself to start meditating. And that's while it's very simple, is some of the hardest work because that is when the darkness really shows itself. That's when the things that are holding me back, the obstacles, whatever they are, that's when they are truly revealed. So I have to kind of be a little bit more emotionally and mentally prepared to dive into that because I know that once I'm ready to sit on the cushion, that's when the real work is going to begin. And so I sort of need to build myself up to that.
Yeah.
How about you?
Mine's yoga. Every time because it ticks a few of the boxes, right? I enjoy it. It's meditative and it's physical exercise. And, the mobility too, right? If I've gone a while without doing yoga, I can tell my body just goes, oh, you're not doing yoga? Well, guess what? We're going to lock up on you and you're not going to be able to move your elbow. And, like something weird like that. Like currently my left elbow is all out of whack right now. But yeah, definitely yoga. That's like my number one go-to is just get back into yoga, do that for a few weeks. Then take a look at the diet. If I'm not getting everything I need from my food, then I make sure I'm supplementing appropriately and getting all the nutrients that I need. But in the midst of it all, probably the one thing that may feel like it's this seems like such a small thing, but just bringing back my sense of gratitude. And I joke about it, right? People are always like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Well, I woke up this morning. That's positive." But really, unpack that.
Yeah.
You're alive. Be grateful for that. Be thankful that you actually did wake up, that you get another day with your family, that you get another day doing the things that make you feel shitty so that you can fix them. Having gratitude in the middle of all this stuff has just got to be one of the most important things for me, because without it, I go into that dark hole of like, why am I really here?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck it. Who cares why I'm here? I'm here.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for it.
It's funny. I try to journal every day, and in my little boxes that I fill out, one of them is the three things I'm grateful for. And ever since we talked in November, I believe it was, to Christy Nelson, the author of Wake Up Grateful, one of the things that came up was what you just said, that having gratitude for just having another day to get another, spin around the globe that is, from a universal perspective, so incredibly rare. That is something I write down more and more, because when you do take a step back, and I found this in nature too, that the smaller you can make yourself, the smaller your problems become. So if you can surround yourself with ocean, mountains, massive trees that have been around for, hundreds of years longer than you, decades longer than you, if you can really realize your place in the universe, all of those problems and all the stuff that you let weigh you down also suddenly get so much smaller. And that has been one of the keys in the last few months, since I believe she was the one that pointed that out, is just talking about being grateful for just having another day has so much impact on the way you can approach your day.
Yeah. I try and take it back even further sometimes, of just being grateful to be alive. I saw a stat the other day that said something to the effect of your chances of just being born are equal to being struck by lightning 14 times in your lifetime.
Oh my God.
Just the fact that you're alive, not even that you're getting another day, but the fact that you were born, got to experience something on this planet is like just amazing to me.
Well, since we're getting a little bit woo-woo in this conversation, which was not necessarily the goal, it's a great place for us to transition to our conversation with our guest this week. Her name is Ava Rockwell. She's the founder of the Rockwell School of Holistic Medicine. We cover a lot of ground in a very short conversation, but one of the things that was most fascinating to me about her school is that they offer a course on spiritual medicine, which I found fascinating. I've never heard of anything like that in a school setting before. So we talk about that. We talk about the various supplements that you can and should be taking to ward off cancers and COVID and all kinds of diseases. And our conversation began with sort of her upbringing and how that carved out a path for her to want to start her own school of holistic medicine to share different methods you can use to achieve your goals.
I got into this field because, I've always kind of practiced holistic health and natural medicine on my own. I grew up ginseng digging with my father and taking supplements from my aunts, and they were all obsessed with the latest health craze. Mm-hmm. So it kind of started very young. And then whenever I had my daughter and she was having some health issues, it kind of brought me back to it. And that's kind of how I got where I'm at now.
So take us on the leap from that to starting the Rockwell School of Holistic Medicine.
Well, there were not any programs that at the time that they were just dated and like using nutrition books from like literally 1982 and stuff like that. And there's no book that's like that good. You know what I mean? Unless it's like Aesop's Fables.
Right.
So anyway, I was just like, oh my God, do not tell me I have to create my own school. But that's what I was being told internally. So I did it. And now there's a lot more programs out there, especially at actual colleges, whereas until recently, you could not even do a minor or a major in alternative medicine. And now certain universities are offering that, but it's still few and far between. And our curriculum is still unique even so, but the more the merrier, because people need this kind of stuff.
A lot of people have heard holistic medicine and know what it is, but one of the programs that you have is spiritual medicine, which I don't think a lot of people have heard about. So could you tell us more about that?
Sure. So spiritual medicine is definitely what I would call super fringe medicine. And it falls outside of like naturopathy, herbalism, and what I'm terming advanced holistic nutrition. So spiritual medicine kind of takes you across the globe and shows you various religions, spiritual aspects, things that people have heard, they don't really know what they mean, like realized beings and saints and ascetics. But we also go into the medicine aspects, like spiritual reasons why people might be sick, because sometimes you can explore every physiological aspect and that it's still not it, you're not hitting it, and it's something spiritual. But some people do believe in it and some people don't believe in it. So if they don't believe in it, obviously they don't have to apply it, but other people know that it's deeper than like the lab results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fascinating, because that's something that comes up a lot on our show. Is we've talked to so many people that so often point out that many of our physical ailments, our pains, our illnesses are actually rooted in some past trauma, some inner experience that they haven't yet processed in some way. Is that sort of what you're getting at? Is sort of rooting out those traumas and dealing with those to treat the what is essentially the symptom of the problem?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Whenever I studied this book called Outrageous Openness by a woman named Tosha Silver, I was already super weird and spiritual, but her book, she talks about her mother having what she would, I don't want to speak for her, but it seemed to came across to me like a karmic illness. And it was bizarre, but that was her story. That was her mom's story, and they're sticking to it. And it was bizarre and weird, but I'm just like, it's so true. Also, not only that, it's like toxic relationships. Like if you grew up in a toxic environment and your voice wasn't heard, or you chose not to, maybe because of your nature, not to speak up or speak out. I do think that these things can and do lead to illness.
So on that topic, as of a few years ago, before I got on this journey of taking care of myself, I considered myself primarily an atheist, to believe that all of this is an accident and we're all on a rock flying through space.
Misanthrope, a fellow misanthrope.
Yes.
I feel you.
and the more I've delved into this, the more that I still, several years later, wrestle at times with how can this be? Like,
Right.
I've seen things. I've
such
felt
a mess.
things.
You must be an Aquarian or something.
I am an Aquarius. You're absolutely
Are
right.
you?
Yes, that's exactly
You
right.
expect more, don't you?
Yes. So even last night, I was out walking my dogs, and in the middle of it, I was denying experiences that I've had, denying things that I've seen and felt, and just gone, well, it's not a shared experience that someone else has seen, so maybe I'm just making this up. Do you ever wrestle with that, or how do you address that?
Wow. Okay. I really, really struggle with it, to be honest. And that's not the kind of typical question I would really expect. So
we get a little weird here sometimes. Sorry.
Yeah, that's deeply spiritual stuff. So yes, I really have struggled with it. The misanthropic side of just like, oh my gosh, these really negative thoughts in terms of humanity. And then on the other hand, at the one-on-one level, I identify with the homeless guy in the street and I relate to him, and there's like a common unity, a oneness. So I have been kind of like you. I explored all the religions and I explored all of the cults too, and cults and religions, because if you know much about cults, all religions were originally cults. Mm-hmm. At least if you're going to go by the educational definitions. Right. I kind of came to this place, and actually recently I had this epiphany, like even though I defined God in really loose terms, for a long time, like I would consider myself a fellow agnostic atheist for a large portion of my life, and that'll get you damned real quick by most of society. So there is a big secret about me, but recently I have been re-inspired to realize that a coming to God, and I could say goddess too, but to me, God encompasses all of it. But for a long time, it represented a masculine colonized idea. But now I've really grounded, and I just feel like God, or whatever this essence is of life. And because I have had many miracles happen, maybe you have too. And to me, that kind of is like godlike stuff. And I've had a lot of atheists in my life. And when you talk to them about miracles, I mean, they semi-scoff at you, it's coincidence. But with all of my atheist friends, one thing they all have in common is a supreme cynicism, a supreme negativity, and in my opinion, a supreme lack of faith. And it's a hard way to live, in my opinion. So for myself, I kind of just recently had what I would say a coming back to God. Again, it's super loosely defined. And even though technically before I was like, well, you can have your own definition of God, for myself, it was really missing. Even like deep inside, even though I said, oh yeah, whatever, I was just like it was really hard for my mind to wrap around. And now I'm kind of like, life is so short. I just don't want to be that total cynical atheist. I do have hope. And, you sound like the kind of people or person who is like me. I would love to start an experimental, like intentional community where people do the work they want to do and have all the material things that they want. And everybody's just, happy and not stressed. But you sound like one of those people who would be on my forums for like perfect societies and utopia.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same for me where I wrestle with what that God is, because I wasn't raised in a Christian faith, but I was exposed to it a lot in my teens. And so that created a lot of conflict for me as I've gone on this path, because I see this as so much bigger than any one God. And I don't mean for this to get as religious or as spiritual as it's gotten,
right.
But I just think it's fascinating. And
I'm glad you like that program. Thank you for bringing it up. It's kind of our little outcast black sheep. Some people are like, you really need to delete this program. And I'm like, we can't. It's part of the medicine core,
I'm a logical being. I love to find an answer for everything. But over the last, 10 years ago, I would have called myself crazy. But there really is like this shared energy. And I want to make a Star Wars joke here, but there is a shared energy that we all have. And, as recently as last week, I saw my wife know that something was happening in the world before we knew about it. So it is really amazing, like just how connected we all are. And, again, 10 years ago, I would have called myself crazy, but I'm on the train now.
You have a right to grow, evolve, and change your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will tell you guys before we move on, if you want like a mind blower, read the book called Be Here Now if you haven't already.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Have you read it?
Oh, yes. I'm a big fan. Yes.
It's beautiful, right?
Yes, absolutely. I've sent it to several people. I love that book.
You too. Okay. So have you read the follow-up by the star of the book? It's called It's Here Now, Are You? The blonde, the tall blonde guy. He wrote
I've not.
Too. You have to go read it. It's incredible.
Okay. I will.
Yeah. And then we can have another interview after that because it will blow your mind.
Awesome. So moving on to some of the more holistic medicine realms that you work in, particularly now as seemingly, according to the numbers, COVID numbers seem to be on the decline. The world is preparing to start opening back up. What are you recommending to people to boost their immune system, to prepare their bodies to the onslaught of various germs and things that we'll be exposed to that we've sort of been hidden away from for the last year?
So, I can't treat, diagnose, or prescribe because I'm not a licensed medical professional,
Sure.
But I am a traditional health practitioner. And what I do for myself and my family, for example, someone close to me got COVID. And when someone or love that you care about gets sick, you will pull out all the stops to make sure that they survive, because people, believe it or not, and you probably already believe it, die within sometimes 5, 7 to 10 days after getting COVID. And you never know based on their age. There's no givens at all, period. You just never know what strain they got, et cetera, et cetera. So the big thing that I encourage all of my family to do right now is I take 2 NACs a day, inositol-cysteine, and there are better brands than others. I think I'm using Life Extension now. I used to use this other brand and I didn't feel like it really did anything, but I would give it another try, but I can't remember the name of it anyway. But what it does is it's been studied extensively for the last 20 years. And what they've discovered, even recently, studies with it with COVID and influenza, that people that are taking NAC regularly.
And real quickly, catch us up on what NAC is.
NAC is N-acetylcysteine. It's a precursor to glutathione, which is the master antioxidant in our bodies. But it helps with so many things. It's kind of like there are certain plant mineral elements that do a lot and other things that only do one targeted action. N-acetylcysteine or NAC or NAC, it kind of does everything. So studies show that people that are taking it, 80% of infected people will be asymptomatic. Can you wrap your mind around that?
That's
and
crazy.
Of the only 25% of the people not taking it will be asymptomatic to COVID and or influenza. But
Wow.
So N-acetylcysteine is incredible. Selenium, they're saying that one of the reasons so many dangerous and deadly viruses come out of China and make it out of the communities is because the entire animal and human population is deficient in what? Selenium. Mind-blowing, right? So people really need selenium, and they're also not getting enough iodine. Iodine is now being used in all extreme fringe medicine from Dr. Circus as a vaccine for children. Now, that's really a radical thing to say, but what I'm saying more clearly is that some people are experimenting with using iodine as an antiviral, an extreme antiviral, and a possible replacement for vaccination. Now, that I am super middle of the fence on vaccinations. That's obviously a 3-day different topic. But iodine is so incredible for your body in terms of fighting cancer. And I'm not making outrageous claims. This is all proved in the data. But so I have my family on iodine and selenium because you can't really take iodine without selenium. The only contraindications are if you do take iodine, if you have nodules on your thyroid bed, then you want to wait till those are removed or reduced before taking iodine. But iodine really should be taken with selenium. The other thing is vitamin A and D. And the best source of that is either organ meats like liverwurst, or cod liver oil, but you need virgin cod liver oil because if you're not doing virgin, you're probably getting synthetic vitamin D re-added to the cod liver oil, which naturally has them in virgin cod liver oil naturally occurring in the right ratios. Because if you don't have vitamin A and D in the right ratios, that can be a problem. I know some people have really plummeting vitamin D levels and their doctors put them on a temporary heavy spike of vitamin D, but they should be supplementing with vitamin A with that or just using virgin cod liver oil, in my opinion. So those are the few things that I would do. Those are probably the 4 chief things. And then I would say skullcap tincture from the beginning until your symptoms are probably gone,
Wow. That's a lot.
It can save lives, I think. The evidence is showing that, not my claim, just so you know.
Yeah. No, I'm actually on an interesting kick right now because typically I label myself as a supplement junkie. I love experimenting with
Right.
different things and how it makes me feel, which is really weird because right now I actually ran out and just forgot to order a whole bunch. So I'm actually not taking anything right now, like not even a multivitamin, I typically take like a krill oil and turmeric,
Right.
things like that. And I don't feel right. Like my body doesn't feel right. It's very interesting. It could be psychosomatic for me, but I am big on giving my body what it needs because I find it really hard to get it all from food.
It's so funny because I did a pre-chat interview. It was a total epic fail yesterday with some guy, and he did not like the fact that he was like, what do you want to talk about? And I'm like, well, first of all, NAC is vital for COVID patients. And he's like, oh, well, I graduated from from FDN, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And I'm like, yeah, so did our Advanced Holistic Nutrition Director. And we're probably going to be partnering with that school soon. I'm like, he's like, and they're like, no supplements. So that's a bad thing. And I'm like, but the girl you just had on, she was telling you about the supplements she liked, He's like, yeah, but she's a pharmacist. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. But I agree with you that if you need a supplement, take it. It's very controversial and they can be dangerous, like synthetic vitamin A, they've attributed that to increased lung cancer rates. There are problems, but at the same time, I would rather take some than none. And sometimes you have to take a vitamin forever. Like in my opinion, iodine, everyone needs a lifetime on iodine. And if you're interested in stocks, I want to, for myself, buy iodine commodities stock because it is going to skyrocket. Once this word gets out, how it can prevent 70% of cancers, prostate, endocrine, breast, thyroid, because our body is full of iodine receptors. And instead, fluoride, bromide, and chlorine are all sitting on these receptors and they're aggravating cancer rates like mad, But this is really controversial information. And I agree with you. I think supplements are good. Some are forever, some are temporary, but I'm not one of those people that are like, you take supplements for life, no matter what, or you never take supplements, no matter what. I'm really not down with extremism,
Yeah, I really like to experiment with it. and find out if it's actually helping me.
I feel you.
But one of the things that some supplements do help me with is my stress level. And this year has been stressful for a lot of people, myself included. I have an extremely unhealthy relationship with ice cream, and a lot of stress eating happening. And there was definitely some weight gain, and I think a lot of people are experiencing that this year. So why are we eating when we're stressed out, and why is it so hard to stop doing that at this point? Since COVID is kind of going away a little bit, and hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. But I feel like some people are still stress eating just like they were back in April.
Okay, so I am a binge eater. I have binge eating disorder, and even though that's no longer a classification in the new DMS-5, if I'm not mistaken, but it's still, it takes a while for translational medicine to get to everybody that binge eating disorder syndrome is no longer a thing, and it's classified as like a nighttime disorder, which it does usually occur at night, right? But anyway,
yep,
right. But I'm like, okay, everybody just admit it. We all have it. Okay.
It's so I don't know. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I'm perfect.
He doesn't have it. Okay. Oh my God. It's a true miracle. Okay. So first of all, people that are addicted to sugar, and see, like, sugar and dairy oh my God, that's a bad mix, right? Because then you have your fat and sugar versus just a fat or just a sugar. But I also had an eating ice cream addiction where I was eating, oh my God, I want to say like 5 gallons within like 2 days. I put in like 50 or 60 pounds because I was transferring addictions. At the time, I didn't realize that, from smoking to binge eating, right?
Yep.
So I picked up a lot of weight really quickly. And then I was like, wow, it was very hard to lose it. And that's how I learned a lot of the stuff I was going to talk to you about. But a brain that is addicted to sugar, and there's varying levels. You can go, well, I'm not really addicted to sugar, but there are people that are. But for example, those people, their brains under like a scan look like it's been battered, like physically abused, just first of all. And sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So we have that fun stat. But at the same time, the non-extremists like Susan Weed, she's a pioneering herbalist, and she, she's old school. She's like, sugar is the taste and the essence of life, even if we're getting it through maple syrup or whatever, the sweetness, right? Are we ever really going to be like, oh, I'm never going to eat anything sweet again? Well, yes, the zero carbers will say that. They only eat steaks for 20 years and they look like they are 20 years younger than everybody else. But for myself, I can't go more than 4 days like that. So why we're eating so much, there's a couple of reasons. One of them, people are stressed about money. And that's why I would love to have an intentional community where we could create or explore and test out this model of living where people are not stressed living hand to mouth, and they're able to be involved in their communities in terms of politics and what goes on and what goes down. So we're not all just the blind leading the blind. The other issue is toxic relationships drive us to eat. And if we have a fight with our kid or spouse, the best thing is some chips, some French fries, calm everybody down. And you need 2 or 3 days to recover, get your hormones back down to normal, kind of calming those genes down, like petting an upset cat or dog. But the thing is like every time that happens, we're triggered to go and get those serotonin and dopamine chemicals from those foods, the potatoes, the sugar, whatever it is, get our hit, right? It's our drug. That's how we cope. And when we're in these toxic relationships that go up and down, like for example, in a relationship with a narcissist who's constantly messing with your head, it will put on 25 pounds every time quickly. So, and it'll take 3 years to lose it, and you'll put it on in like 3 months. But the other issue is if you even remove all those toxic relationships, any amount of stress, we default to that binge eating pattern. And what we have to start doing is getting healthier foods in us. And at some point we have to draw the line and be like, okay, I'm on day 7 of binging. I've picked up 8 pounds. This is me literally this week. I'm on day 2 of recoup. And I've lost, literally, I'm not kidding. I was, 130 yesterday and I'm 125 today, and like 5 pounds of water weight, inflammation. And that's 1 day of not eating refined sugar and refined carbohydrates. I had like a pound of salmon, a pound of asparagus, and I had like 2 tablespoons of butter, which that's a lot of calories, right? But I'm still down 6 pounds from eating potato chips, potatoes, whatever. So that's I think that we stress eat for stress, and we don't know how to draw the line and be like, when is enough enough? And sometimes it takes 2 years of binge eating, or sometimes you're going to go back and forth, you're going to be good for 3 days, bad for 4, bad for 1. It really helps if you are in love and happy. It makes it easier.
Yeah. Well, and we hear so often that, you can't out exercise a bad diet. So as we're looking to kind of take the 1-2 punch and eat a little better, One of the things that I recommend a lot is that if someone's looking to start an exercise routine, it's just to do something that you will do every day, because it doesn't matter what it is if you're not doing it. So what do you recommend to folks who are considering, okay, my gym's about to open up, or I love running, or whatever they're looking at? How do they make this part of their routine?
Okay, so real quick, just briefly about the binge eating. I just want to throw this in that whatever we eat the most of, our bacteria will increase for sugars or for healthy foods. So if you're eating more toxic foods, but this is more what I would say for more like really more overweight people. But if you're relatively at a healthy weight, I think it's really easy to get those gut bacteria. It's generally back in order unless you're a super antibiotic user. But I don't know if you guys know this, but 2 weeks of cod liver oil restabilizes the gut. But just so you know that, who would ever think that a cod liver oil would reset a gut microbiome? Not perfectly, but as perfect as it could be than it was. So as far as the exercises go, this is what I was going to talk to you guys about briefly. So 10 years ago, when I was maybe like 12 or actually 13, when I was reading Younger You Next Year, if you guys have ever heard of the series, they've been around for a while. They were talking about, well, this is what I was doing. I was getting up at 5:30 to go to the gym, and I was doing treadmill for 45 minutes. You guys can imagine how much I was sweating because I was also overweight. And guess what? I wasn't losing any weight, and I wasn't eating donuts either. So when I read this book, they talk about the stress response. Whenever you overexert, it activates the primal brain, which causes you, that's kind of what they say, starvation mode or messing up your metabolism. I think when people say that, this is kind of what they mean. And they don't realize that what they're alluding to is they've created the stress response in the body, the primal activation, which causes your body to think it's really hard for you to get food. So it retains everything that you do and it won't budge. So I was overexerting myself. I hated my workout. I hated the stair thing. I couldn't figure out why I was going to lose weight. And I actually almost totally gave up. And that's not like a good place to be. Then I started like realizing I needed to enjoy my workout. So whatever you're doing, you want to enjoy it. You want to love it. And it has to be a convenient time and easy. And I recommend multiple forms of workouts, like, maybe 3 days a week, do a 1 to 2 mile walk. If you can do it every day and you have time and you want to do it. But if you have a dance class I do dance classes on Mondays and Thursdays, and then Friday through Sunday, I walk 2 miles. But if people can just walk 5 minutes, especially if you're diabetic and you have, like, for example, I want to say PADS, peripheral artery disease, just go walk 5 minutes, or stretch in your bed for 2 minutes, because that really does make a difference. And I would inspire people to just not give up, if they can't do a whole mile or 2 miles.
Any kind of closing thoughts you want to send to people that are listening, and where can we find out more about you and your school?
So you can visit us at the School of Holistic Medicine, and we're going to do 50% off our iodine course. You can use the code FITMESS. And I would just say other things to explore when losing weight or getting fit would be to consider reducing inflammation with a gluten-free diet, even if it's a 3-day to a 2-week trial. A lot of people have issues with grains, period, and experiment with that as well. And hidden food sensitivities like to nightshades or lectins, beans, things like these are things like those can really stall weight loss. And just do what you really like to do. Explore things like, if it's a belly dance class or walking or running, whatever.
All right. Our thanks to Ava Rockwell. She is the founder of the Rockwell School of Holistic Medicine. And again, very generous of her to offer a 50% discount on the iodine course. You can get that by using the promo code FITMESS, and you can find the link to that on the show notes for this page at thefitmess.com.
That was such a good interview. We covered so many different topics in there. And I think that really just reemphasizes, what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, where in order to clean this mess up that we all have in our heads and our bodies, it's so many steps. It's so many little things that you have to do. Some big things, but it's so many things. And, trying to take them all on at once is going to be a failure. So just be sure that whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying, that you're starting small. You're doing baby steps. You're doing things that you can maintain, as opposed to trying to take the whole world on in one shot and then fail 2 days later.
Yeah, look for the easy win. If it is just a 10-minute walk, start with that. Do that for a week or two. Then add 5 minutes. Then, maybe incorporate fasting, maybe meditate, whatever. But if you start with something small where you're going to have the win, then you're going to stay motivated to keep going. If you decide, I'm going keto tomorrow and I'm going to work out an hour a day and I'm going to sleep 8 hours a night and I'm going to meditate for half an hour a day. Well, all of a sudden your calendar is going to be really full of all the things that you're doing to take care of yourself, and you're going to forget to go to work and pick up your kids and feed them. So just look for the easy win, because it will lead to more wins and it will have that compounding interest that helps you to reach the goals that you're trying to reach for yourself.
Yeah. And if your step is pretty big, if it's, a 30-minute workout, which is terribly difficult to maintain, right? Do that first thing in the morning. Get it done as quickly as you possibly can, and then you just don't have to worry about it for the rest of the day.
That is something that when I do work out 30 minutes a day or more, I know that if I don't do it early, it's the monkey on my back all day. It's taking up so much mental energy to go, when am I going to get this in? Should I do it at lunchtime? Oh, I might not be able to because I've got that call I've got to do. Oh, maybe I'll do it at 2 when I've got that break in between. All of a sudden, you're just all day, you're spinning on when am I going to get this in? All of those things that you want to try and do for yourself, the earlier you get them done, the more accomplished you're going to feel. And that is just going to help perpetuate the growth on the path that you're trying to build for yourself.
Yeah. Have you ever heard that story about if you have a glass jar and you've got some big stones and you've got some small stones and some sand, and the stones and the sand represent all the things that you have to do in one day? No. And if you put the sand in first and then you put the medium ones in second, there's no room for the big rocks.
Right.
But if you put the big rocks in first, then you put the medium rocks in, then you put the sand in, it all fits. So get the big things done first. Get the big, Brian Tracy has a book called Eat the Frog, right? If you have a frog to do a really hard task in front of you, do it first. Eat the frog first thing in the morning.
That's a really good analogy. I like that rock analogy. Well played, Zach.
I pick up a lot of useless information that sometimes I can regurgitate.
And that's what we're here for.
So I do like that analogy of the big rocks, the little rocks, and all the sand. And I look at athletic brewing as the sand at the end of the day for me, right? I've eaten everything. I've done all my stuff. And then I top it all off with an athletic brewing company, IPA, something like that. No alcohol, delicious beer.
And sponsors of the Fit Mess podcast, which is reason alone to buy any and all of their products that they have available. You can do that on our website. And while you're there, please do subscribe on whatever podcast player you're using, and do sign up for the newsletter so you never miss a thing related to the show. All of that can be done at thefitmess.com. With that, we will wrap this one up and be back next week with a brand new episode. Thanks again for listening, subscribing, and for your ratings and reviews on whatever podcast player you're using. We will talk to you next week at thefitmess.com.
See you, everyone.
We know this podcast is amazing and does not seem to lack anything, but we do need a legal disclaimer. Jeremy and Zach are not doctors. They do not play them on the internet, and even if they did play them on the internet, they would be really bad at it. Please consult your physician prior to implementing any changes that you heard on this podcast. The listener assumes that Jeremy and Zach do not know what they are talking about, and that you will do your own research on the topics talked about on this podcast.